And good morning, everyone. It's the top of the hour. I'm Luli Castro, Swiftland's Executive Director. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this morning's webinar, Providing Understanding and Resources for Patrons with Disabilities, Part 1. We have a wonderful learning opportunity ready for you this morning with Dr. Stephanie Rollins. And it is my distinct privilege to introduce you to Dr. Rollins, who is the Electronic Resources Librarian at the Fairchild Research Information Center at the Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. Dr. Rollins is also an adjunct reference professor for the University of Alabama. She serves on both regional and state library committees and has 20 years of experience in academic and special libraries. She holds a BA in English from Auburn University, a master's degree in library science, and a doctorate in public administration, both from the University of Alabama. Please welcome Dr. Rollins and enjoy her webinar this morning. Dr. Rollins.
Thank you so much, Luli. Welcome, everyone. It is a balmy 25 degrees here in Birmingham, Alabama. So hopefully you'll brag for me and tell me how wonderful and how warm it is for you guys there. I am so looking forward to talking with you this morning, and hopefully it'll be more of a conversation than an outright lecture. That's my preference, is that you guys talk back to me. If not, I'll just talk and give you some information. And know that the understanding part of this presentation is done with kindness. If you don't have a lot of experience working with people with disabilities, or if you don't have a lot of friends with disabilities, and I had been there before and I just didn't know. So please know that I'm not talking down to you. I'm not trying to get on a soapbox. I just want to give you some information that I think that will help you guys when you're working with patrons or family or friends that have disabilities. And I'll tell you a little bit more about me and my disability, which is kind of a secret to most people. Not a secret that I don't want to tell, but I just, when we get more into the understanding part, you'll see what I mean. Most people with disabilities just want to be treated as people, and we'll talk more about that. I'm getting ahead of myself. But I also want to share some examples of how you can work with your staff within the library, how you can give each other training on some simulations with disabilities. There's some fantastic ones on the web. And not that you can exactly feel like what it has to disability, but it could give you some information. I'm also going to talk to you about where you can get some policies and help from library organizations, some technology, some things you may not know about that your computers already do, and also some general advice. And like I said, hopefully this is going to give you some advice about how to work with people with disabilities. If you have any ideas or questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box and we'll discuss them at the end. I think Aaron's going to be a super help with that. If you have any problems hearing, please again contact Aaron and let him know that you have problems hearing. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm looking at the chat window and I am so jealous. Oh, 30 in Pensacola. That's still not too warm, but it's warmer than us. 59 in Fort Myers, Lily. I am so jealous. I cannot wait until we get like in the 60s again. I think I could easily be a Florida person. So welcome. I hope the information that I'm about to present is going to be helpful to you, and not just serving people in your libraries, but also training your staff, working with people in the community, your friends, your family. Before we get started, I just want to, if you could type in the chat window, does anybody in your family or any of your friends have disabilities, or have you had a lot of interactions with people with disabilities? I just want to get a general sense of what you guys have dealt with, if at all. Just wanted to know. And if so, which type of disability? I'm just curious. So I'm just watching the chat box for a second. I'll give you a minute to respond. Okay, Lisa, no experience, and that was my case when I first started out because I worked in a autism, fantastic. The blind, okay, great. Leslie. Oh, you worked in special ed for 16 years with children with autism. Wow, that's fantastic. Not much experience. Okay. When I started, I was a military librarian, so I worked, mostly with military officers. And then when I kind of transitioned to working in a college environment, I experienced it quite a bit more. I worked with the deaf, the blind. There were a couple people that came into the library because we're open to the public that were kind of autistic. Um, yes, e-classes, fantastic. So it seems like there's a whole bunch of different spectrums of working with disabilities or not working with disabilities. So some of this you guys may know, but for those of you with no experience, I think it's going to be super helpful. I will share my experience with you when I had never really had a lot of experience with cerebral palsy, and when I went to grad school, my roommate had cerebral palsy. And so, I was kind of amazed about all the things that she could do. But one of the things I had to learn is that she just wanted to be treated as a normal person and that she was totally capable of doing everything on her own. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I didn't realize that, and that was just my ignorance. So we'll talk a little bit more about, talking to people with disabilities and different things like that. Oh, interesting. Mobility disability, Christine, your father. Okay, so we've got all kinds of different experiences. That's fantastic. And so if you do have an experience and you're working with staff that don't, this is, experiences that you can talk about and share, and it will give them information that they need to know to kind of help each other. That's fantastic. Thank you guys for sharing. Well, do you guys want to hear a secret? And it's not really a secret, but I want to share something with you guys that I don't often share with people. So would you like to hear it? Okay, fantastic. Well, you can't see me, you can only hear me, but when I was about 23 years old, I found out that I had retinitis pigmentosa. And so that's an eye disease where eventually your peripheral vision disappears and you go blind. So from hearing my voice, you would not know that. So, think about stereotypes and how you can't ever really know what people are going through. And most of the time, I don't have a problem. I can't drive, which, would probably not make most people happy, but I adapt. And that's one of the things you need to know about people with disability. They adapt, there's technology, and we just want to be treated as normal people. So hopefully that doesn't sound too soapbox, but I just want to give you kind of my background so you know going in some of the things that I think about as far as disabilities. And, growing up as a teenager, I didn't know very much about people with disabilities. And when I first started in my profession, I knew that I had issues with my sight, but I didn't share that with people because I just wanted to be treated as normal. Okay, so a little bit about me. So we're going to move on because I don't want this to be about me. I want it to be about the information. But if you have any questions for me about being somebody that's visually impaired and using library services, I teach online. I am a librarian and I can do my job fully. So, just things that you don't normally think about with people that have disabilities. So hopefully sharing that information was helpful to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you again for sharing with me. I really enjoyed hearing about your experiences with disability. So one of the things we need to think about before we get started is I like to look at statistics because I like to have a picture. What do we mean by disabled? Who is disabled in the U.S.? And this is from the 2010 census. And just so you know, those of you that don't know a lot about disabilities, these are kind of some of the stats for who's disabled in the United States. And I put the link down at the bottom if you want more stats. But 56.7 million people, or 19% of the population, and 50% of this is severe. So that's quite a bit of people. There's 8.1 million people that have kind of a visual impairment, and of those, 2 million can't see at all. There's, so these are kind of what I was when I was looking at doing this presentation, I wanted to know, well, what were some of the most prevalent disabilities? And so we've got the difficulty seeing, the difficulty hearing, the mobility that some of you have had experiences with, the touch, even people that are not disabled but have problems touching, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And some people have not just problems with these issues, but they have multiple disabilities or they have trouble with doing things with daily living. And then also some people have Alzheimer's disease, senility, or dementia. And then one of the things you don't think about is disability that actually is included in the ADA is actually depression. So just a couple of things to think about when you're trying to frame that picture in your mind of who is disabled. And so one of the things as in libraries and as far as legal legislation, you need to think about is, what does it mean by disability? And this is from the ADA, and it means that it's a mental or physical impairment that substantially limits one or major life activity. So things like, uh, you know, physical impairment. So this is the legal definition. So can you guys give me some examples of disabilities? And I'm going to also talk about some of the ones that they specifically mention. Um, so if you want to give me some examples. Speech, fantastic. Franklin Cini Charles. Autism, blindness, great. Intellectually disabled. See, those are the ones that, sometimes you can't see. Hearing issues, absolutely. And I'll just read some examples. So here's kind of according to the ADA, some of the examples of physical and mental impairments. Orthopedic, visual, you guys mentioned, speech and hearing, you guys mentioned, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, mental retardation, emotional illness, specific learning disabilities, drug addiction and alcoholism, and HIV infection. So some of these, are kind of disabilities, and again, depends on the employer. Yeah, PTSD is definitely a mental disability. I have, gosh, I don't know how many family members that have served in the military. And PTSD is not just military; it can also be shock, from a traumatic experience. Also, sometimes they mention something called traumatic brain injury. So those are some of the things that the ADA identifies as disabilities. So just some of the legalese if you needed that. So some of the things I'm going to talk about today are some of the most prevalent. Part two, if you're interested, I could go into some of these other disabilities. But I think, just in my experiences, and I'm not super experienced, but these are some of the ones that I have experienced, which are the vision, the hearing, the mobility, and the cognitive. And if you guys have experienced more than that, let me know. But by vision, again, I mean completely blind or partially sighted. Hearing, completely deaf, or deaf with cochlear implants, or hard of hearing. Mobility, the inability to use one or more extremities, confined to a wheelchair or unable to grasp or lift objects. So that could also be some of the older people that you deal with in your libraries. They have, just kind of a grasping issue. And one of the things I've noticed as I've gotten older is, and I don't know if you guys have too, maybe you guys are really young, but one of the things I've noticed is I've had trouble with my left hand trying to grasp things. And so, not that I have any kind of mobility issues, but I think just as a part of getting older, your parts start to kind of give out on you, so to speak. And so I have sometimes have trouble with my left hand, and also touching. If you've ever gone to pay at the cashier and you're supposed to touch yes or no, sometimes my fingers aren't recognized by the screen. And so that's not definitely a disability, but there's issues that normal people have, as far as in the library, in the world, that some of these things I'm going to talk to you about can help. So some of these things I'm going to share with you, you could actually use for yourself, as well as helping people and patrons that have disabilities. And then the last one I'm going to talk a little bit about is cognitive, which is mental or learning disabilities such as autism. And I think we see a lot of autism. I think I read somewhere that 1 out of every 68 students in the classroom have autism. So yeah, Elizabeth, I've got a little bit of arthritis going on too. In fact, I'm going to the neurologist, not for that, but I've got some like tingling in my fingers, so I'm going to see what that's all about. So one of the next things I want to talk to you guys about that I think is so fantastic about the invention of the internet is, how can you simulate what a disability feels like? And so I want to share with you a couple of sites, and there's more. If you guys let me know for part two, I can share some other simulations with you. But again, I just wanted to share some of the ones that I kind of thought were prevalent that you might deal with the most in your library situations or maybe even your life. And so even though it's impossible to understand exactly what it feels like to have a disability, um, these are some sources that kind of simulate what it looks like, what it feels like. And again, like I mentioned, it's often difficult to see someone who has a disability. So like if you saw me, you would have no idea unless I told you that I had RP. And so I think these are great sites, but there are also critics because they say that these simulations are counterproductive. They worry that, like, if you take part in it, that you're going to feel like, okay, this is what it means, and I understand it. But unless you live with a disability day to day, most people don't understand. If you've ever done those simulations where you wear a blindfold, you guys get to take the blindfold off, so you get to return to your daily life. And sometimes critics say that these kinds of exercises lead to pity. And so, what I want you guys to do after class, we'll talk about this in a minute, is go back to one of these sites and look at it. And, it'd be great for staff training to kind of get an idea of the frustration that people with disabilities have. But people with disabilities don't want your pity, they just want you to give them the tools that they need to be able to do research, to be able to get on the computer. Um, so treat this, don't feel pity, but use it as information. Just like if you were to take a flight simulator, you wouldn't think you could go out and fly a plane, right? Um, yes, you'll get to have these slides after class, Christine, definitely. And also, you have my email. I'll give you my email. So you guys can contact me. And in fact, I want you to, and I'll talk more about that too. But so just take these simulations as information, and I'm going to show you a couple of them because there's some that are really fantastic. So give me just a moment, and I'm going to share my screen with you, and hopefully I won't lose you. Erin and I practiced this, so hold on just a moment, and I want to talk to you guys about some of these, and I just think they're so fantastic. So just one moment, please. Okay, hopefully you guys can see my screen. I can't see you chatting right now. All I can do is see my screen. But I want to talk to you about some of these wonderful simulations. So I know autism is a big one for you guys because I saw that. Well, let me see if I can do the chat. Sorry, just one second. I digress. No, I can't see the chat. Sorry. So I'll come back to the chat after we look at some of these and see if you have any questions. Or Aaron, just pop in if somebody has a question, please. Okay, so this is a website called Games for Change. And what this one does, this is autism. So I think it takes a play on the sim games if you guys have ever done that. And so it simulates the experience of a child with autism. He goes to a playground, the noise goes up, there's a visual blur, there's audio distortion, so you can actually enter this game and kind of get a sense of what it feels like to be a child with autism. So it's kind of a fantastic site. It would be great for staff training. And there's more than just the ones I listed on the slide. I just, again, tried to give you a flavor of some of them. If you have another specific disability and you'd like a simulation, I can definitely go out and research it for you. So the next site I want to show you is called WebAIM. And this is one of the very first kind of disability simulations. And this one's pretty old. But I think it's still useful because it gives you kind of a simulation of what it's like to work with a screen reader, what it's like to work with low vision, a dyslexia simulation, and then one, I don't think anybody mentioned this, or maybe I didn't catch it, but also ADHD. What do you do if you have that and you're extremely distracted? So you can kind of experience what happens with kids that have kind of a distraction aspect to their lives. The next one I want to show you is, hopefully this will work. Okay, so this is from PBS and it goes along with a documentary, and it's got more of kind of, again, that ADHD experience. So if you look, there's some information here in the middle, but up at the top, if you see where it says experience firsthand, let me show you something too. Let's see if this works. Something very simple you can do, not just for people with disabilities, but for yourself. This is a trick I learned. If you click on the control, and it may be command if you have a Mac, control and the plus key, your page will get bigger. So you can make your text a little bit bigger. Did you guys see that, hopefully? Okay, so here's a visual activity. If you're reading with distractions, you can try it. An auditory activity, and also an attention video. Too much attention. So it's kind of explores the aspect of ADHD. It's a fantastic documentary as well. Okay, the next one I want to show you, and I'm not sure if this is going to come over the music. Let me see. So I'm going to click on play. So this talks about how it feels to be dyslexic, and hopefully you guys can see it work. So I'm going to click on play. So you can select a person. So if you click on Zach, and I hope this is working for you guys.
Just so you know, the audio will not translate to them.
Okay. So you can actually click on play. And again, this website is on your slide, so don't worry, you can get back to it. Click on play. And so what with Zach's problem is he has trouble with letters. And so he has to remember kind of the order. So you can click on play. And so the word is actually bike. So you can kind of play this. It's very interesting. And so each different kid has kind of a different spin on dyslexia, and so it's really neat to look at. So one of the ones that definitely is very hard to see is people that have depression. And this one's called Depression Quest. And what it does, it's interesting, it walks you through kind of experience somebody that has depression. We can click on it, just one second. And instead of having options, like I would go exercise, I would do X to make things better, it actually crosses out all the healthy choices. So it kind of gives you an experience of somebody with depression. Also, the music's kind of sad, obviously. So this is one you can kind of walk through, and it's not one that you often see, but people that have depression, it's just a very difficult disease. And so it just kind of gives you a flavor of that. Okay, the last one I want to show you is, this one is called a disability simulator. And it kind of experiences if you have trouble writing, people in the classroom, students, if you have if you're in an academic library. And so what it does, I'm going to click on start, is you can't type, you have to type a paragraph in 2 minutes, and you cannot use the letters D, R, T, E, N, and S. And what it does along the way is it kind of harasses you. And so it just tells you that letter's not allowed. So you can try to keep typing. And what happens is, let me see if I can show you. Sorry, I'm not typing very well. Okay. And if you if you try to stop, let's see, I don't think it's going to work now, but if you try to stop, it fussed at me and said, basically you're dumb, stuff like that. So see, can't you write any faster? So it just kind of gives you a flavor of the experience that people have. This one's kind of mean, I think, but you kind of get the idea. Um, this one, sorry, this link here, it says impairment simulator software. This one is really cool because you can experience a little bit of what it's like to have a visual disability or a hearing disability. So in fact, I just want to show you kind of what retinitis pigmentosa looks like. So if I click on Start Using Vision Simulator, so these are some of the different disabilities. So I can click on retinitis pigmentosa. And so what happens is you can click on impairment controls. Okay, so I'm going to click on close. This is just a tip. And I can click on, this is what it looks like if it's mild, okay? And so if you keep going, you can see what it looks like once it gets severe. So people that have RP kind of have what's called a, what do you call it when you're at the shooting range? Kind of a telescopic view because the sides are cut off. And maybe some of your older family members have glaucoma. So again, you can do mild to severe. And again, it just gives you a flavor because you can't really totally experience what it's like. Here's macular degeneration. So hopefully this just kind of gives you a flavor. And again, these are things that you can use with your staff members, maybe a family member if you're trying to explain something. One of the other ones that's really neat, again, is the hearing one. And so you can kind of experience what it's like to be deaf a little bit, not completely, but you can play something. These are different situations like a restaurant. So you can kind of see what it's like in a restaurant. So you can kind of, and so it has different pitches and different things. So you can kind of, just very, very interesting. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off. So again, those are just a few different things that might be helpful to you. I'm going to try to go back to my presentation, so hold on just a moment. Okay, so hopefully you guys have your PowerPoint screen back. I did that right. Erin would be proud, I think. Okay. All right, great, fantastic. And I'm sorry if you couldn't hear some of the audio. Hopefully you could still hear me. Um, and you could see go back to some of those simulators. So here's your homework, and hopefully some of you will experience this. Pick a simulator site. Write down some of your observations. Maybe you could do this as a group within your library as a development activity. And again, think about, can you really understand if this is this what it feels like to be a disability? Think about your reactions. Do you feel pity? Do you feel admiration? Think about how you feel, and this is going to help you when you work with people with disability to know what your reactions are. Okay, so a couple of things this is a scenario, and this is from a book I found that is just fantastic, and I hope I have more time to read it. And when we get to part 2, I want to talk to you about a librarian I know who you will just find amazing. I need to take lessons from him. But this is just a scenario from somebody, and I just want you to think about this, whether you think that this person is disabled or not. So here is a life scenario. The alarm on his phone rings at 6 a.m. He reaches over and touches an icon, and a voice tells him it will be sunny and 65. Wouldn't that be wonderful? He touches another icon and hears about 2 discount coupons for a restaurant near his work. He makes a note, hurries through his morning ritual, and heads out to the bus. He gets a notice that the bus is going to be late, so he quickly sends a message to his coworkers that he's going to be late. When he's on the bus, he selects an audiobook to listen to. He gets to work, and he gets a folder, and he captures the screen and turns it into Braille. So he's totally functioning, and then he goes out for lunch, and he shows the waiter his coupons, and then on the way home he streams a baseball game, and then he thinks about trying a new recipe for dinner, but realizes he doesn't have ingredients, so he has the add to shopping list button in his app, and then he decides to listen to some music when he gets home. It's time for bed. He sets the sleep timer and plays his audiobook for an hour. And he talks about how I hardly remember what life was like before apps. And Elizabeth, the name of the book, it's actually from the, oh shoot, I think it's the National Institute for the Blind. I downloaded it, and it's all in text. So if you wanted to add this to your collection somehow. I'm not sure how that would work. But the book is called 26 Useful Apps for Blind iPhone Users by Peter Canstanet. Sorry. Cantisani is how you spell it. And it's a completely text book that comes up in Notepad. And I didn't have time to read through all 26 of the apps, but it just sounds like, the way that technology has evolved, that it really has helped people with disabilities, and they have really evolved as well as far as using technology. So there are quite a few people out there that are advanced. So this person is living a normal life. In fact, using apps probably better than I do as a visually sighted person. So I just wanted to share that profile with you, and that leads me to, hold on just one moment, what I've kind of said from the beginning. So just think about people as normal, people with disabilities as normal. Again, my friend with cerebral palsy, she's one of my best friends. We were grad school roommates, and I was in her wedding. She was in my wedding. Um, when we're out, people stare. People say, "Oh, you're doing such a great job. You're so inspiring." And she tells me all the time that she just wants to be treated as a normal person. So here's a little bit of etiquette. Here's a little bit of when you're thinking about people with disabilities. It's okay to be curious, but I would never ask a person with a disability, well, what's wrong with you? I mean that people with disabilities, like I said, they just want to be normal. Don't talk about it unless they want to, um, and don't dwell on it. Focus on the person. Be polite, use common courtesy, treat people, it's all common sense. Treat people the way that you want to be treated. And so my friend Heather, who has the disability, she doesn't want people to say, "Oh, you're amazing." She wants people to say, "Oh, well, how is your teaching going?" She teaches 5 online courses at once for English online. She wants just to be treated as a person. So again, I hope I'm not on my soapbox. I hope I'm not telling you things you don't already know. But part of working with people with disabilities is awareness. So again, some of the things that you can do, especially in a library setting, is think about um, how can you help people, but you don't want to go ahead and help them. You don't want to lift them. You want to ask, like for instance, my friend with cerebral palsy, you want to ask them for help. Um, you know, don't assume that people need help. If the setting is accessible, people with disabilities can usually get around just fine. Again, they want to be treated as independent. You can offer assistance if the person appears to need it, and if she does want help, ask how before you can act. Um, Sometimes people depend on their arms for balance, so if you grab their arm, it could throw them off balance and they could fall. Some people, especially the kids with autism, they do not want to be touched. It could cause a reaction. And also, if they're with a caretaker, speak to the person, not the caretaker, because sometimes you'll see elderly people in libraries and they have an aide. Speak to the person, not the aide. Um, so just some things to think about. And basically, the people who have the disability are the best judge of what they can and can't do. And also don't make assumptions. Okay, so one of the things that you probably know about, and if you don't, you definitely need to know, is that in 2001, the American Library Association approved a policy for providing equal information access to patrons with disabilities. And this applies to facilities, collections, even library school education. And in fact, I'm sure Luli has talked to you guys before about Project Alpha at the University of Alabama, and that's kind of educating how to work with people with disabilities. And so some of the things you need to think about as far as library services is things like captioning, interpreters if you have an event, books by mail, electronic services such as chat, also facility access, accessible parking, braille signs, TTY phones for the deaf, and your collections, of course, you know this. A variety of formats, text and audio, and also, no discrimination in employment. And when I read this policy from ALA, it made me realize how much mainstream technology has really changed some of the assistive technology and library services requirements. So, providing training for library students how to and staff on how to work with patrons with disabilities is very important. And so this is a website to that policy. Let's see if I can share it with you. Just one second. I'm not going to read the policy to you, I promise, but I just want to share this with you so you can kind of see what it looks like. Okay, so here's the ad, and so it talks to you about the scope of the disability law, a little bit about library services, facilities, collections, again, assistive technology, employment, professional development, conferences, some of the publications, and then here's a few links to the resolution, different things like that. I'm going to skip. We'll come back to my slide, but since we're already sharing. There's also some tip sheets that are fantastic. Now, these haven't been updated since 2010, but they're still helpful. And so this is from the Association of Specialized and Cooperative Library Agencies, which of course you know is a division of ALA. And it's some tip sheets that help libraries ensure that their facilities and services are fully accessible. And it also gives you some information on different types of disabilities, learning disabilities, mental illness, people that have multiple disabilities. So it's just a kind of a good overview. In fact, there's even one on service animals, volunteers with disabilities, even some information for trustees. So I encourage you to come back and take a look at this. Each one of these usually launches as a PDF. So it's, again, a fantastic site about library accessibility and what you need to know. So I mentioned that to you. Hopefully that'll be helpful to you. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to stop sharing this and come back to our presentation. So just one moment. Okay, so again, next slide. Those are some of the tip sheets, and hopefully those will be things that you can talk about with your staff. You can just read on your own for your own knowledge, whatever works for you. So now I want to move to a little bit about the technology. When I first found out I had RP, I went to the library for the blind and physically handicapped, which is Alabama Public Library Services, which is a state library. And they had, if you see the first picture up here with the big, huge screen, and it's got text on it, and it's got a book beneath it, they had computers and book readers like this that would enlarge the screens, and those are called CCTV. They also had a program, and this is still a program that's fantastic. You can mention to your patrons that are blind or mobility challenged. They have a program for the National Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped where they will send you free recorded books, books in Braille, and they'll even send you the device, and it's all free. And all you have to do is have a note from a doctor. So if you see this bottom right picture, it looks like a little Fisher Price cassette machine. This is actually the updated version. So they've got this machine that they will send you for free. So if you have patrons who use your library, they can also subscribe to this service. It's fantastic. I actually, when I went through library school, used it, and I was able to listen to some fantastic books on tape, even though I could still read. Reading sometimes can be difficult for me. And then also you may have seen these TTY phones, and this is, kind of older technology. So this is a little bit about how it started. Also, large print books have been around for a long time. I think people, even people without disabilities, it's much easier to read a large print book. So just some of the technology that's been around. And then computers actually started integrating some of these features. For example, if you look before you start up your computer, if you look on the lower left-hand side on a PC, you'll see a little round button, and it's called an Ease of Access Center. And it has some technologies such as a magnifier, a narrator, and an on-screen keyboard. And so the first link here will take you to some of the features. I'm going to kind of run through them quickly, but I would love it if you have a PC, if you would go back and look at them, because these are things that work with your systems person, your network person in your library, or even at home if you have a friend or family member and they're having trouble, you can help them set up this Ease of Access Center. And it's nothing you have to install, it's already built into the computer. So computers have started getting on board. So I just want to share very quickly with you a couple of these sites here that talk about what PCs can do to help with some of these disability issues. So just one second. And then I'll also talk a little bit about Apple. And of course, you guys know Apple has blown away all the disability features. They just have done a fantastic job from the beginning. The PC is helpful. It does do a lot, but I find the Apple products to be much more helpful. So just one second, I'm going to share this with you. Hold on. So again, these are some of the accessibility features in Windows. So I just wanted to mention them to you. So this is kind of how you can get to that Ease of Access Center. So you can use the computer without a display, which is kind of interesting. You can make the computer easier to see. You can use a mouse or keyboard, without a mouse or keyboard, sorry. And so these are some of the assistive technologies here I'm getting to. The magnifier, so you can use a magnifier on the computer screen and it blows up your whole screen. Um, for me, it's kind of difficult to use because if I get trapped in it, I can't get out. But you guys play with it, see what you think. Narrator is a program that reads the screen out loud, which is fantastic. And then there's also an on-screen keyboard that you can use your mouse, so if you have trouble typing. So that's kind of a fantastic one. The next website I want to show you, what this does, no, I don't want to take a survey. This does is it shows you the disability features. This is a little bit more in depth. So if you have Windows 8, Windows 7, or Windows Vista, it tells you all the accessibility features and where to find them. So if you have, Windows Vista or Windows 7 and you want to look at the vision accessibility features, this tells you where it is, and it compares all three of them, tells you where to find all of them. So, language and learning, if you have epilepsy, there's some things that you can do and look at. So I encourage you to go back and look at that. Okay, the next thing I want to talk to you about is Apple. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this a little bit, and I'll come back to my screen and review. So for me, and there are some Android features also, they're just not as great. I didn't do a lot of research on those and I didn't include it. There's a couple of things that Android does, and I can mention that to you in an email if you want. But I was so blown away by what Mac does on their PC and what Mac does on their iPads and things that it just puts Android to shame. I'm sorry. um, but here are some of the features that you can do if you have a Mac computer. And this is also some of these will carry over to the iPod and also the iPad. The first one is called VoiceOver. Pardon me. And VoiceOver actually will read the screen to you. And again, think in mind of not just people with disabilities, but how these features could help you if you were driving. You can press, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the one that's on the iPhone. But it'll read the screen for you. It's called VoiceOver. If you've ever used Zoom, you can make your screen bigger. If you're on an iPhone, it's tiny, so there's something you can do. Of course, it will take dictation for you, and then you can also have it read it back to you. You have contrast options, so sometimes it's easier to see things on a black background, grayscale, so that's fantastic. You can also look at the cursor size. Sometimes that's helpful. And there's also options for including a Bluetooth Braille, so on your Mac. Also, if you're thinking about if you're deaf, you can do FaceTime and you can actually sign and the person can see you sign. Of course, text messaging has been huge for the deaf population because people can text. There's also a closed caption on the Mac. Again, you can do iMessage where you can send pictures, you can text. If you, instead of playing a sound, for people that are deaf, you can actually have what's called a screen flash. If you have trouble hearing, there's something you can do with mono audio, which is fantastic. And then again, people that have trouble with touching, there's something that's called switch control. There's slow keys, there's sticky keys. So again, I'm sorry I'm rushing through this, but this is something that you guys need to come back and look at. You can change your dictation commands. You can, if you have trouble using a mouse or a trackpad, you can use the mouse keys to control the cursor with the numeric keypad. So if you have trouble touching, that's something that you can do. There's also an on-screen keyboard, and sometimes people who can't move at all that are paraplegic, they have what's called an eye tracking ball, and they can actually look at the screen and it will type for them. They also have options for people who are you have autism or have distraction ADHD. You can set up the Mac so they can focus on just one area. You can keep it very simple, so that's called Simple Finder. Also, there's a built-in dictionary. There's also a text-to-speech. So you can highlight text and Alex will read it out loud, so if you have trouble with reading. Also, there's word completion that you can turn on. And then finally, there's speech. If you have trouble with speech, there are some assistive features in the Mac operating system, like we talked about FaceTime, which does sign language and gestures. Mac has come a long way as far as some of the features that are helpful. Okay, the other thing I want to talk to you about, and some of these are some of the same features, but there are features that are built into the iPhone and the iPad and also the iTouch. If we think back to our scenario about the blind person who's totally technology savvy, these are some of the features he probably used. You've got Siri. I just used Speak Screen last night to have it Siri read me the weather. So you can actually press the button and say Speak Screen and she'll read you everything on the screen. So even if you're not disabled, but think about you're driving and you find this article and you want it to read it to you. It'll read you the whole article, which is kind of neat. Again, we have dictation. You can zoom on the iPad or the iPhone. You can adjust your font. Again, there's Braille. Again, FaceTime, closed caption. We've talked a little bit about that. Message, iMessage. You've got visible and vibrating alerts. So if you ever think about a disabled hotel room, handicapped hotel room, there is a light that'll flash if somebody's at the door. Your iPhone will also flash, which is kind of neat. So even if you're not disabled and it's the middle of the night and you get a text, it will flash for you so you can find your phone. The other thing is that the iPhone is compatible with hearing aids, so that's kind of neat. Again, if you have trouble with buttons, sometimes the home button I have trouble with, like I mentioned with my hands. There's a switch control. There's also an assistive touch function, so if you have people that you work with that, again, have trouble, that's something that you can look at. Again, there's dictation. You've got predictive text. Again, the guided access where you can, people with autism, it can guide the access. So as a parent or a teacher or therapist, again, you can lock down the iPad to areas that they just need to see. Um, Again, there's a Safari reader. You may have seen that button up at the top of your phone. It will actually show it without all the options so you can read the screen a little bit easier. Again, there's some speech features that you can explore. And one of the things that's really neat is that Apple has developed hearing aids that work with the iPhone and the iPad. So that may be something that you want to look at. So sorry I rushed through that. There's a lot to look at. We could probably spend an hour just looking at Apple accessibility features and demoing them. But I'm going to go back to our presentation and kind of review just very quickly. There's a couple other things I want to mention before we go. And I'm looking at 10 minutes, so just 1 second. I'm going to share my screen with you. Go back to the presentation. So just 1 second. Okay, so again, there's information on the PC. You can look at that. Again, I like my PC. I don't have a Mac, but I feel like Apple blows it away. So again, Apple has in their Mac has options for vision, hearing, physical and motor skills, and also learning and literacy. They try to do it all. And again, like I said, computers got on board, but then came the smartphone and tablet, and that has really um, helped with kind of integrating things, making it accessible, not having the huge, like I talked about in the beginning, that huge reader that you had to sit at that was fixed in the library. You can be very independent with your technology. So a couple apps I want to mention, and again in part 2 I'll mention a lot more apps, and I want to hear from you as far as what apps and what disabilities you're interested in. But again, there's the built-in screen reader with the voiceover, the zoom and contrast settings that make it easier to see. Again, these platforms offer a huge, I mean, you just go out and Google disability apps and you will be overwhelmed. But there's a lot of apps that are out there that are helpful. In fact, the Kindle, the iBooks, and PDF, it'll read that for you. And like I said, there's no large cumbersome equipment. You can kind of be independent and get done things in your life. Again, I talked a little bit about the features built in the iPhone, the iPod Touch, and the iPad. So if you want to go back and look at that, the link is there. Okay, I just want to mention a couple of specific apps. This one is free, and I've actually used this one when I was in a restaurant and it was dark and the menu was really tiny print. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but it works with iOS. It's on the iPhone and iPad, and it includes a slider for the font, and it has a light and brightness setting. So it's great for reading small print. It's also great for reading call numbers. And that one is actually free, and you may want to download it just for you. Another one is called Video Magnifier. This one is for iPhone and iPad, and it's compatible with iOS 5 or later. And what this does, which is fantastic, it's not free. I just looked up the price again, it's like 20 bucks. But what it does for people that have problems with disabilities is it has different, or visual problems, you can invert the color. And so sometimes it's easier to see like a white on a black. Just like if you've ever used the Kindle app, you can make the screen black and the font white, so you can see it a little bit better. And it includes a bunch of different color settings, and so you can kind of get the idea of what that looks like. There's also some apps for the deaf and hard of hearing that are kind of built in. I just want to talk very quickly about those. Just 1 second. I'm looking back at my notes for a second. There is something called P3 Mobile. This is free. It is fantastic. What it does is it allows you to make phone calls and also video phone calls. And you have the option to be connected to an operator who reads your messages to the recipients and transcribes their messages back to you. Or you can video call your friends via sign, and if they're not there, you can leave a video message in American Sign Language. So it's kind of a really neat function. And that's kind of a snapshot, this very first little link here. There's also one called Clear Captions, and this is a service that works with your phone and your internet connected computer. And it on your phone call, it's similar to closed caption on your TV. You can hear and read what's being said. And this takes the frustration out of hearing on the phone. Instead of asking people to repeat themselves or guessing what was said, you can read the person's words which display during your call. So that's kind of neat. Like I mentioned, the iPhone will connect to a hearing aid and they can hear it. And this last one is kind of interesting. It's called Sound Amp Lite. And what it does is you can turn your iPhone into a listening device. So I don't know if you ever saw that infomercial where you could have the some sort of remote and you could hear the TV louder with headphones kind of thing. Well, it's the same kind of thing, and nobody can tell that you're doing it. I guess you could use it to spy on people. That's pretty bad. But what it does is you can load the app and you can use your earbuds to hear your friend, the lecture, or even your favorite television program. And so the neat thing about this is that it's discreet. And so, if you have older people in your family that, don't have a hearing aid, they can sort of hear normally, but they need a little bit of help. This may be something that they could do, to hear better with, not out having to wear a hearing aid all the time. Or if they want to watch TV, they can put in their earbuds and listen to this Sound Amp Lite. So it's just really fantastic. Also, the American Sign Language Dictionary is available both on the iOS and the Android, and it can help, if you're a library staff and you want to learn ASL, it includes over 5,200 words. So it can help you kind of learn how to sign with people that do sign, which is it's a big learning curve. It's something I've always wanted to do, and I just haven't had the chance yet. And this one's only $2.99. And one of the things you need to think about, an interesting trend, is that a lot of deaf people have gone with cochlear implants, or they lip read. So there's no longer kind of a black and white, this is what you need to do for your deaf population. You kind of need to mix it up and do different things. Okay, one other thing I want to show you is dictation. And again, we talked a little bit about Siri, and so it does okay, but I don't know if you're like me, if you've ever used Siri, sometimes I get mad at her because she puts the wrong words in. Like one time I typed in up for my run and she typed in up for my rum. So, Siri has a little bit of work to do with recognizing words. But it does help, definitely helps. I'm not complaining, but she does have some work to do. There's also something called Dragon Dictation. It's a free app for the iPhone and iPad, and there's a version that you can load on your computer. And Dragon Mobile Assistant is the Android equivalent. And so this is hands-free typing and navigation. It's very helpful. And then the last one I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to close with this one because we're getting close to running out of time, and I want you to have time for questions. This last one is called Tap to Talk, and this is for mobility and speech challenged people. This is free on the Apple or the Android, and it's designed for people who can't talk or those who have difficulty talking. And it provides simple to complex commands that the user can issue at the touch of a button. So if you have autism or really bad cerebral palsy where your hands shake, that kind of thing, so you can actually make sentences. So it's just a really helpful tool. So again, you'll get a PDF of the presentation with the links in it and everything. I just really touched on a couple of the apps. I really didn't get all into the apps because I thought we needed to talk a little bit about awareness and some existing things that you can do with your existing computers if you're a library that doesn't have a huge budget for iPads and different things like that. But your patrons may have iPads and devices that you could help them with, and you could teach them how to use devices that would help them live their lives. So I guess for next time, I'm hoping that you'll email me or you'll email Aaron and let him know what types of disability apps you're interested in, because I can do my research for you and evaluate them and pick out ones that I think that would be helpful for you in your library setting or disability setting that you're looking at. So do you guys have any questions for me? My email is there, and this is definitely to be continued. Hopefully, I hope that you'll come back and you'll email me or Aaron with what you're interested in. And I hope that today has just provided a little bit of awareness without being over the top on my soapbox. I apologize if it seemed like that, but if you've never dealt with a disability or somebody that's disabled, like me, I didn't know what to do. I had, so with a little bit of training and awareness, hopefully you can help people who just want to be people, who just want to be normal, who just want to use your library. Um, so, do you have any questions for me? I'm looking at the chat. Um, and I've also had problems with Dragon dictation. So I kind of like the way that Apple does things, the way that it's integrated. So that may be a better issue. I'm sorry, better feature for you. Maybe explore that. It's great technology, but it's definitely not perfect. They're still working on it, but it beats, what we had in the past, the cumbersome technology, the scanners, all that. So it's fantastic. Thank you
Well,
guys
Dr.
very much.
Rollins, while we're getting those wonderful questions and look at all those comments and high applause coming in the chat box for you, I want to thank you for a wonderful webinar. We'll continue to monitor the chat box, and we've already rustled us up a participant for part 2 already. So we're very lucky to have been able to participate in this learning opportunity. Great information. A sneak peek of what's coming up. I know that there's a lot of questions in the chat box, so let's just remind you, and you can also see it on the screen in front of you, that part 2 of this wonderful topic is going to be held on April 17th at 2015, April 17th at 10 o'clock Eastern Time for those of you that are on Central Time. And thank you. We do have some that, Dr. Rollins, that they do ask us, is it Eastern or Central? So we're trying to be sure that we're consistent in telling everyone that it is 10 o'clock Eastern Time so that they don't miss anything. It's wonderful awareness. It's a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and we're hoping to bring more opportunities and more services for patrons with disabilities in the Swiftland menu. Attendees, I would also like to remind you that next week, Friday, February 20th, because today is Friday the 13th, we have the 4th in a series of 9 webinars to learn about diversity and how to best provide library services to your diverse patrons. The topic for next Friday is E is for energizing your workplace with diversity and culture. It's the successor to V is for the values that we each bring to our communities in the DDI lineup. So please feel free to keep checking our CE calendar on our website. Also check our Facebook page, like us on Facebook because we like you right back. Remember to follow us on Twitter or look for your friendly message from the listserv. We're monitoring the chat box. I see no more additional. Yeah, Pensacola is in Central Time, Christine Olano. So we're happy that we're able to make sure that you know that the webinars are on Eastern Time. So everyone, thank you for attending. Have a terrific weekend. And
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
oh, that's right. I mailed my Valentine today, finally.
Oh, great, great. So thank you guys very much. Like I said, I just really wanted to talk to you and hopefully it wasn't too much of a lecture. And I really just wanted to share with you my impressions, having been there, not knowing about disabilities and over my career having experienced it and, trying to treat people normally and with respect and knowing that they want to be independent and just live their lives. And some of these apps are just mind-blowing because they allow people to be totally independent. And I think that's really exciting. So thank you guys so much for your attention and for being kind and for sharing with me as well. And I look forward to the next time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.